So I usually am teaching a yoga class around now, and I was asked to do this, and they said, ethos. And I said, my goodness, this can go in so many different directions. And we're going to kind of play together a little bit. So on this particular slide, they talk about, I gave 3 definitions of ethos. And I'm going to take it, and I'm going to show how an understanding of ethos through this little short presentation will lead you to the possibility of leading a tranquil life. It's a really specific thing. Okay, it's a really specific thing. So ethos, from the Greek, the characteristic spirit of a culture, era, community, or the character of a person. So sometimes when you're giving a speech, you give this little short resume of whoever you are. One of the things that's not mentioned about me is I'm a physicist by education. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be very linear and analytical, because physics isn't always linear and analytical. People will give comments about their history to kind of hold a sense of authority so that people might accept whatever it is they're saying. Ethos can also be the persuasive or ethical appeal based on the character of the speaker. And who knows what my character is going to be like at this particular moment. Understand that I'm going through these slides, and this is the first time I go through everything. So, if it's kind of like flying by the seat of the pants, denim is really sturdy, so I can pick myself up, and that should work pretty well. So one of the characteristics of ethos comes out of the trustworthiness or the similarity to the audience or the authority or expertise of a given individual. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I'm going to take this a very different way. Synonyms for ethos can be related to the ethics or morality, norms or principles. Can you sense with internal quietude, accepting the silent, still spaciousness of the moment in the midst of your temporal existence? Your existence has all these challenges, but there are specific gifts. The gift is you have your life. And if you're courageous enough in the midst of all the challenges you have to dive into the deepest part of your heart, if you have the courage to go through all the storms around your heart, the weather is always good below that. It's always good. And so you can live on the surface of your heart, or you can live much deeper inside. And if you do that, see, this could immediately go in a very different direction, because now I'm going to start talking about dopamine and what happens. People get fulfillment from dopamine, right? Or they have encouragement to go in a given direction, which ultimately leads to fulfillment because of that. But what happens if you don't have to use the dopamine system at all? And that's basically what yoga does. Well, at least the way I teach it. Yoga is a process of finding the silent, still spaciousness in the moment. So in this moment, I can look at this side, not comparing particularly, but I can get a sense of the people here. and I can get the sense of the people here. And there's a slight difference. And what that would mean is the ethos. Now let's go back to the very beginning. So I tied this together. The characteristic spirit of one group as opposed to another can be quite different. But there's not necessarily, you might know someone on one side or know someone on the other side. You might know one individual or you might know another individual. And there is a certain feeling about that, but that's an emotional thing. That emotional sense of the people in a room is not in the deepest part of your heart. And that can lead you to some kind of reaction. But what if I can look at you, however you are, regardless of all the your particular ethical or persuasive appeal? I'm just going from the slide. I don't necessarily think that way all the time. What happens if I don't get caught up in that? What happens if I'm blind and deaf and you show up in the room and you light up the room a different way than it was before you were there? Because before you were there, I only felt me. And yet, you add something. You could say you added something to the existing ethos of me being alone in my perceived nature of myself. So if I'm in meditation, sometimes I'm in meditation and I'm very quiet. But what happens when you're in meditation? You have emotions that can come up. And people say, oh, they start going into self-judgment. I'm not very good at meditation because I have all these emotions coming up. But what is the intent of doing meditation? To let the waves of your emotions in your mind calm down. And then on the surface of your existence, it reflects your existence a very different way because there's no waves. You start to see what reality really is. So let's take a very different approach. Okay, I'm really off script here. Let's take a different approach. What if in some ancient times, could be male or female, you're in the midst of a war and someone is attacking you? Why would they be attacking you? Because you're in the midst of a war and they're on one side and you're on the other side. This is very relevant to present times. What do I have in common with the person across from me? They can bleed too. What am I fighting for in my life? What are they fighting for in their life? And when you first start going into the world doing whatever it is that you're doing, you bring to the world something very unique. You are unique. You have abilities and you have talents which are maybe not even defined. You meet people and you give them a business card. I got a nice business card from my photographer friend back there. That's a pretty fun guy. But that doesn't define him. It's a certain expression. So if you're in the midst of a battle, whatever it is, Everyone's battling. It's a terminal experience. Okay, that's why we compare it to a battle, because you're not gonna live through this. Okay, you're not gonna come out alive. So why not put your entire heart into it? Why not put everything that you are and everything you believe into it, but recognizing that no one's really the enemy? And I'll put it in this kind of perspective. This will make more sense. Eventually, all of my wanderings will resolve into a clear point. Someone came up to me and said, I'm looking for someone that I'm really compatible with. And because it was a friend, I could be honest. Because I figured, man, I'll be honest anyhow. Typically, I'm going to be honest about things, okay? Because I'm old enough that, you know, why not, right? I'm the old guy, so it's like, yeah, he's quirky. We'll just accept him. He's been around for a long time, okay? I'm not going to be injured by this person. So comes up to me, yeah, I'm looking for someone that I'm really compatible with. And what was my thought? I actually didn't say it. What was my thought? It's like, oh, you don't want to grow in your relationship. And so you're looking for someone that you're already compatible with, and that's not always the best way to learn. So in the midst of a battle, what can you learn in the midst of a battle? You see some young person that's very afraid, putting all their energy out to try to take you out. And what do you know in that particular moment? You know that they're not too focused. They're distracted by whatever's going on, and they're putting so much energy out that they may not survive the day. Now I'll give it let's lighten it up a little bit. I had a physics professor many years ago. Okay, I was 19. When was that? 1960, probably 66, 68, something like that. It was a long time ago. And he had cowboy boots that he wore and jeans and a white shirt. That's what made it formal. Kind of like me right now. Okay, I've got jeans and a nice shirt. And we loved to talk to him because whenever he would laugh, oh, we're talking about ethos. Whenever he would laugh, he would jump up and down and he'd jump around in a circle. He'd just like do a pirouette or something. I mean, that's what he would do. And he very bravely told me something, told us. There were a bunch of he had a bunch of physics students around. And so this is in South Louisiana, so pretty wild group of guys. However wild you can be if you're studying physics. And he said, I had a job when I was 19, and I was getting ready to go to university in physics. And it was a job using a sledgehammer to break up rocks and bricks. And he said, I'd go out, and I saw this old guy the first day. I saw this old guy, and I thought, oh my God, he's not going to make it through the day. He's so old. And so he said, I got there around 6. By 10, we got a break. And he said, I was worn out, and he was looking pretty good. And he came up to me and he said, you know, I was a little arrogant. Physics guys are sometimes a little arrogant. Sorry. When I was younger, it was certainly that way. It's not so much that way anymore. I'm just happy to be alive. He came up to me and he said, you know, son, I watch you. You get that sledgehammer, you pick it up really high, you pull it down really hard. Now he's talking to a young to-be physicist, right? He says, you pick it up really high and you pull it down really hard. He said, just pick it up. It'll come down by itself. And that's why he wasn't tired. Because you begin to understand that if you're going to make it through all of this, you can't let yourself be upset about what's going on. So if someone's attacking you, it's not personal. They're just trying to save themselves from their own heartbreak, their own fears. If you can sense the ethos, the characteristic spirit of that person, then you can learn something from it. So I always say this. In those battles, and I actually have memories. This is previous lifetime. If you don't believe in previous lifetime, okay, I'm psychotic or something. Whatever. I put it however you want. It's fine. Enjoy your life. My favorite day was the last day. The last day, the day I knew, regardless of my experience, pacing myself, whatever else, determination, I wasn't going to make it that day. I wasn't going to make it through. And that was my favorite day. And the reason that was my favorite day, because I was not owned by anyone. I was not representing some political movement on one side or another. And the guy that's coming across, he's not my enemy. There are no enemies at that point. You're just going through what you're going through. You're having the experience. So if you live in a sense of judgment, it'll create some problems for you. If you recognize he is not the enemy, and this is a kid that just wants to go home, then your experience can be used in a very different way. Injure him in a way that he can't hurt you, but may survive and get home. That's not what people typically think. So if you have a sense of the ethos of that particular moment, you take a very different approach. That means you're not afraid. That means you're not against anyone. You just do the action that you need to do to survive through the moment using the skills that you have. It becomes a very different thing. So in Bhagavad Gita, they say, for man dwelling in the senses, attachment is born. From attachment, desire is born. It could be a desire to get away from something or a desire to achieve or get something, possess something. And recognize you're going to die. So whatever it is that you possess, it's going away. So it's better to develop develop whoever you are, whatever you are. Develop that. Develop your understanding. Develop your appreciation that every challenge that comes across your life is an opportunity for you to learn from whoever is bringing that challenge or associated with that challenge. And what does that do? It's like, who taught me yoga? All the people that have been in my class taught me yoga. All the people that I met that were not in my class taught me yoga. Why is that? Because if I pay attention to the suffering in their life, I understand something without having to live through the harshness of their life. So do I love the people in my life, whoever they are? I don't know you, but, I recognize that I could learn from you. Who trained me? Everybody around me trained me. I'm not separate from anyone. I'm certainly not trying to take anything away from anyone. Not interested. But sometimes just by your very presence, it fulfills me. So I walk around in this state of fulfillment because I sense the ethos of each moment and each group and each person and all the circumstances. Instead of getting involved in the logic of a situation and analyzing based on logic, because logic is, there's something in mathematics, it says, in any logical system, there is at least one paradox that cannot be resolved within that system. So you have to have a bigger logical system. So no matter what logical conclusion you want to come to, there's always more. There's always something that you miss. So logic cannot encompass reality. And emotion cannot encompass reality. So if I get the ethos just like that last day, that last person coming to try to take my life, he's not my enemy. He's not. This is, hey, you wanted to get a body, you wanted to have a life. Well, you got one, and it's an adventure package, which means you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know where it's taking you. You don't know. And the idea is like, I got the adventure package. Let's see how it plays out. That's what makes a good writer. They'll surprise you somewhere in the midst of all that stuff, right? Or an artist. They'll surprise you. Okay? Or a good photographer, same thing. His encouragement changed the quality of whatever picture was being taken of me, whatever that means, whoever I am. So from attachment, desire is born. It's an approach. From desire, anger can be born. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. From anger arises delusion from the compelling nature of anger. Because when you're very compelled, they say crime of passion. Well, how did that happen? Well, he certainly wasn't logical at that particular point. It compels you into delusion, thinking that somehow by doing whatever people do when they're delusional. And what happens when you become delusional? There is loss of memory. From the drive to justify anger, from the intent to justify, there is this destruction of discrimination. And now all of a sudden, you're attacking in some illogical way people who are not necessarily the enemy. Because you get the ethos and you understand what's going on, and you're not disturbed. So at one point in my life, I was, how could we say, accosted by a very large male, very large. And what I did was, because I have some experience, I'm not some great martial artist, but I'm very present. And he was threatening me, and I just smiled. And inside my head, it's like, this guy could really hurt me. But I didn't take that approach. I just walked toward him. And he backed up. And it was like, all right, I understand what's going on here. And he kept threatening me, and the threats got worse and worse. And I kept walking forward and smiling and realizing I could get really hurt here. But I wasn't going to back down. And he ultimately ran off, locked himself in his house. Now, I wasn't trying to give him a bad time. He was trying to give me a bad time. I just happened not to allow him to do that. So how do you become a victim? You become a victim when the other people are the enemy. When you realize that, what ethos do we have in common? We both bleed. It's a terminal experience for both of us. It becomes a very different approach to life. It's a very different approach. And I've been in lots of situations. There was one time, I'm really off track here, but it's going okay. With the elimination of desire and hatred, through self-restraint, you can attain tranquility. And how do you attain tranquility? You restrain yourself from being in logical judgment of something or an emotional judgment of something. You get the sense of what's going on. So there's this young guy in my yoga studio, walked in many years ago, not too far from a police substation in Lower Montrose. And he was much bigger than me, which doesn't take that much. Okay. And so he came up to me. I'm in the front of my class. I've got, 25 people in my class. And he walks through the door and he walks to the front of the class and he grabs me by the arm. He's like 6'4", 190 pounds, something like this. And he grabs me. And you just wait for what's the next thing that's going to happen. Because first of all, I know I'm not going to live forever. So, all right, this may be the day. Getting emotional is definitely not going to help the situation, because if I get emotional, he'll get more emotional. So I was very calm, and I put my fingers on the outside of his elbow, and just, where your funny bone is, I just put my fingers there on both elbows. And he took his right hand and he tried to pull back to hit me. And I lifted his left elbow up and he started, because his hand is no longer on me, his right hand's no longer. So I lifted his left elbow and he started falling to the right. And so he immediately grabbed me again. And we did this for like 10 minutes. And what did I know? I cannot let him get hurt. Because if I let him get hurt, then he's going to come with all his buddies. So the main thing was, how long is this going to last? He will get tired. I know this, because I will stay calm and he will be reactive. How can this little person do this? And so I continued. About 10 minutes. My class is sitting around. I don't know what they were doing. It's like they were apparently not motivated to act in any way, including calling the local substation. So my sense of the ethos of that situation and that individual, and a recognition, not getting upset about the students not doing whatever they could have done, enabled me to continue for some period of time. And I'm not even breathing hard, and he's breathing hard. And so once I see that, okay, now it changes. So at that point when he was really tired, it's like, you want to see what I can do? Let's go outside. No, you're the teacher. And he walked out. It becomes important to live from a sense of the ethos in a moment. And it's non-specific and it's always changing. Depends on where you put your attention. When you go very deep inside the heart, the weather is always beautiful. That's my assertion. If you courageously explore beneath the storms of your heart and mind, logic, emotion, if you courageously explore below that, the weather is always beautiful. That's my assertion. That's ethos.